Welcome to 2026 from myself, Deb, the omnivorous reader, and my omnivorously chewing little dinosaur, the destroyer of books, who clearly wants to be elsewhere right now. Come on then. So, a couple of people have indicated that they would quite like to see a summary of my 2025 reading. Now, this is tricky. Much as I adore those tier ranking things that some people do, I read a lot. I read 151 books start to finish in 2025. This is a humble brag, I admit. That does not include the partial reads of things that I was rereading. It doesn't include all the short stories, and certainly doesn't include all the poetry, but those are all the books that I've got listed as start to finish in 2025. If I did one of those cute tier rankings that I love so much, from, you know, I want those minutes of my life back, to stellar progress, whatever, that would take about 3 hours. Everyone would hate that, so I'm not doing that. I also, sadly, don't have the technology at the moment to flash up those excellent little covers on the screen, so we're going to do this old school style. Bear with me. So in 2025, of those 151 books that I read, it was a great reading year, by the way. Absolutely loved it. YouTube proved an absolute boon in 2025. The year was such a better reading year than it would have been otherwise. Fun, buddy reads, etc. So, of my 151 books, 55 were 5-star reads. Now that sounds like a really good proportion, and it is, and I enjoyed every one of them. But let's be honest, partly that is because that includes a lot of rereads. I do a lot of rereads. I do have a screaming dinosaur. I don't know why he's screaming. Now, obviously, the rereads slant it significantly, because if I'm going to reread something, the chances are pretty good that I liked it the first time around, or that there was something there that I wanted to see. But often it's because I read it so long ago that I don't remember it. And that is the case for the Dark is Rising series by Susan Cooper. I've got the first one here, that's Greenwich, because that cover is just so spectacularly beautiful. The Dark is Rising series, it's by Michael Heslop, who did a lot of illustrations for this series. Every single one of them absolutely gorgeous. It's this spooky, mythological, kids or young adult, depending on your perspective, story where mythology from England, Cornwall, Wales, all the good stuff is mixed in there with with a series of adventures. The Dark is Rising, 5 shall turn it back. And so the first one is this one, Greenwich. Oh wait, is Greenwich the first one? Oversea Under Stone, that's the first one. Then you've got The Dark is Rising. I think that one takes you to Wales. Then Greenwich takes you back to Cornwall, or is it the other way around? I've forgotten. The Grey King and Silver on the Tree. Every single one of them, I think, was a 5-star read. But the first on my list here is The Dark is Rising. Number 2. Then I reread a whole lot of Gerald Durrell books. I started with the Corfu trilogy. I don't know when they started calling it that, but when I first read this back in the 80s, maybe, they were individual books. So My Family and Other Animals, this is the book that I have owned since I pretty much stole it off my parents because I liked it so much. So My Family and Other Animals and Birds, Beasts and Relatives, which is the second one, or the second part of the Corfu trilogies, those were 5-star reads. I also reread a Terry Pratchett, which is down there somewhere. Monstrous Regiment. That is Discworld number 31, and it is quite exceptionally unlike most of the other Discworlds. It's got a military aspect. Vimes appears, but only peripherally, and I still think it is one of the best of the Discworlds in many ways. Oh no, no, don't do that. Be cheap. So throwing things off the cage for attention, that's the thing we do. Also in rereads, I did mention that a lot of 55 of them were rereads. 500. How many of the 55 were rereads? Where did I put that note? Okay, 55 5-star rereads. Of those, 24 were rereads, including these three. Harry Harrison wrote a trilogy called Star World. Now, Harry Harrison, amongst those who know and love him, is notorious for having two styles of writing. One is that very comic, The Stainless Steel Rat Wants You, though my favourites are The Men from Pig and Robot, and he does that well. I don't always love comedy, and his Wheel World series, Star World, I think is the first one. No, that's the last one. Wheel World is definitely the second one. And I guess it must be Homeworld is the first one. Anyway, this is non-comedy. For people who like classic science fiction and don't like comedy, I think this is an excellent place to start your Harry Harrison journey. You've got a main character called Jan Kulizik, who is part of the ruling-ish tier of Earth. His brother-in-law is very high in what might or might not be the secret police, and he finds a rebellion and gets involved in it. Then in the second one, he gets deported to the stars, to a prison planet, and eventually he comes back. Fantastic series. I have not read this one since I was in my early 20s at the latest, possibly since I was in my teens, but I recently got it all together again. I was so happy to do that, and reread them all again. Now, I read a lot of Agatha Christie's, including N or M. That's Tommy and Tuppence Mysteries #3. That's in Tommy and Tuppence start right after World War One, and this one is during World War Two, so they're older people by then. I like the fact that Christie did that. She didn't do that often with her characters. She usually started them young and kept them young, or started them old like Miss Marple and kept them old. But Tommy and Tuppence are very rounded characters, far more than you would normally associate with what people think they know about Agatha Christie, and they do have this definite story arc. Also, they named their daughter Deborah. Can't object to that. Something else that was a reread was Alan Dean Foster, The Tower Aim Krang. This is the first in the Pip and Flinks series. I read all three that when I was young were the trilogy. Orphan Star was #3. The Tower Aim Krang, Orphan Star. The End of the Matter. Wasn't The End of Matter #3? I can't remember. I read them many, many times when I was a teenager. I was practically word perfect on some of these books, but again, I hadn't read them for a very long time. Is that a book you're chewing? No, it isn't. Hooray! It's an actual toy. So I went back to read Alan Dean Foster. I was pulled up in the comments. Apparently it's not a trilogy anymore. Apparently there's like 10 of them. I even have a couple of them now. I'm looking forward to them, but I'm kind of hesitant. I really love Alan Dean Foster's writing. I think he gets underrated because he did so many film adaptations, and people mostly know him for film adaptations, but what came out of his own brain, from his own imagination, is fantastic. I do recommend. Another reread, and the last reread, and one of the last books of the year, was Logan's Run. Once again, I loved this when I was a teenager-ish. This is not my original copy. I have had this copy for a very long time. It's a lovely little corgi with no attribution to the cover, which is this strange futuristic hand with the glowing jewel in the center that eventually starts flashing and then goes black. And then you die. Fantastic story. Far better than I remembered it. And perhaps one of the reasons I hadn't reread it for a long time was it was one of those ones you fear that you reread it, it's not going to be as good as you remember. Well, Logan's Run was better. Far more adult, far more mature, far better written. Do recommend. Okay, moving into the non-fiction. Remember, omnivorous reader. I read lots of things. This is The Birds at My Table by Darryl Jones. Darryl Jones is a professor of urban zoology at Griffith University at, I think it's Logan campus in Brisbane. So he's a local. He's a local who I've never met, and I would probably go fangirl if I did. He is a professional zoologist. He's a very published zoologist, and he was one of the first ones that started talking about wild birds in urban environments. This is a huge thing in Australia. A lot of Australians hate and despise our native animals unless we have nearly killed them off. So the ibis, an innocent bird that used to wander the mangroves and eat crabs, is now called a bin chicken and objected to, when in actual fact the reason it no longer has mangroves to survive in is us. But because it's managed to survive that, we all love it, unlike, for example, the wagtails that are slowly dying out and everyone adores them because we're killing. Rant over. Anyhow, in this very long, excessively well-referenced book, if I started reading all the references and the notes and the academic papers it came from, it would take forever. And yet, Darryl Jones has created a very popular science-friendly book in which he talks about why we feed birds and why it matters. I do feed wild birds, and I was delighted to find that Darryl Jones does himself. It's always been a very hotly debated topic in Australia as to whether you should and you shouldn't. But this book doesn't just cover Australia, it covers it as a global phenomenon. You've got examples from Canada and the USA and the UK. You've got a few really random ones. I have reviewed this book quite extensively on my channel. I probably shouldn't start doing that again now. Roger Zelazny, my beloved. The doors of his face, the lamps of his mouth. Now, this is a short story collection with a fantastic cover. Look at that cover. Absolutely marvellous. The artist was also an architect, if I remember correctly. And I can't cover art by... Jeez, it's so damn tiny I can't read it. It'll be on the review. This one will be reviewed. Go look for it. Fantastic cover. Short stories. Roger Zelazny is an author that I would read. There's laundry list if I could find it. All of these stories are good. The titular story, the door of his face, the lamps of his mouth, is a wonderful ocean fishing adventure with... Is it a dinosaur or isn't it a dinosaur? I leave it to you to read and determine. Oh, then... This one is not a reread. Oh, not all of the Roger Zelazny's were either. I'd read a few of those stories, but there were two in that rather chunky compendium that I hadn't encountered before, which is delightful. A brand new book for me was Arkady and Boris Strugatsky's Roadside Picnic. I've been hearing about this on BookTube for a few years now, starting with Matt over at BookBuild. Many other people have spoken with deep love, admiration of this book, and I wanted it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So this SF Masterworks is in fact one of those books that I rarely cave into and buy brand new, because I had to read this thing and there didn't seem to be any other way. It was a 5-star read. It was possibly a 10 out of 5-star read. It was fantastic. It way exceeded my expectations, and my expectations were high. I reviewed it on my channel. What's next on my list? Oh, Homeworld. That is To the Stars #1. Well, I showed you those already, by Harry Harrison. And again, reviewed elsewhere. Now we've got into a slightly different genre. Lord Dunsany was an English author who wrote fairy tales, fantasy. He wrote a lot, and he may be considered one of the original fantasy writers or not. The King of Elfland's Daughter was a book that I'd been hearing about for a long time. I finally read it for the first time in 2025. It was well worth reading. I really enjoyed it. It was a 5-star read for me, even with all its flaws, and it's got a lot of flaws, and it won't be for everyone. The writing style has aged in several significant ways that I talk about in my review. Somewhere in 2025 is that review. Okay, then we've got one that isn't here. This is a dive book, Beneath Our Bay by John Gaskell, that talks about the dive sites or possibly snorkel sites that you will find in Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne if you are willing to dive in water that can give you frostbite. I lived in Melbourne for years. That water, so cold. Another short story collection by George MacDonald. I was very lucky to find this beautiful little hardcover of The Light Princess and Other Tales of Fantasy. It's got fantastic illustrations, and I reviewed all these by Arthur Hughes. The illustrations, the jacket designed by John Duvet. It's actually of one of the internal images, though not this one. Fantastic stories that romp in between children's stories and semi-mythological stories and fantasy stories and fairy stories. It's a great book. Again, you'd have to be into that type of early proto-fantasy, but I would recommend it. Now, I also read The Four-Dimensional Nightmare by J.G. Ballard. I apparently didn't get that one down. That's way too high in the air to get down now. I also read The Uncertain Midnight by Edmund Cooper. Love Edmund Cooper's work. He's an English author. His writing can be a bit misogynistic and it can be a bit odd to the modern reader, but there is nothing that I've not read from him that I haven't enjoyed thoroughly. 5 out of 5 stars for Edmund Cooper is almost a given. And I can't even sometimes really explain what it is about his writing that I think is so fantastic, but it just speaks to me in a way that is probably concerning considering some of the things he says. It too is way up there in the air and I can't go and get it now. What else? Oh yes, Purveyne by Keith Roberts. Purveyne is another one that I've been hearing about for years and I really wanted to read, but I did finally find this one and I was very excited and I read it and it did not disappoint at all. 5 out of 5 stars. Tremendous acclaim for Keith Roberts' brilliant novel of a strange parallel universe where history went wrong in 1588. So, short stories-ish, a tapestry of a book, as it's described by Galaxy magazine. I had read one of the story sequences, whatever, within here once before, and it made no sense at all on its own, but in context with the other stories, it does. So if you come across a Keith Roberts, and you haven't read any Keith Roberts before, I think maybe check if it's a short story from Purveyne, and if it is, try and read it as part of Purveyne. That would be my recommendation. Anyway. A.E. Van Vogt. I actually read quite a bit of A.E. Van Vogt this year, and one of the rereads was Computer World. This is a fantastic, well-recommended A.E. Van Vogt. It is also a well-read A.E. Van Vogt, as you can see. This one, I believe, I've had since I found it on a library sale table in the 20s from Carringbush Regional Library. And I don't remember being in Carringbush. Whatever. Great book. Of A.E. Van Vogt's work, which a lot of people do find hit or miss, and I totally do understand that, I think Computer World is one that may work for you, even if some of his more wild flights of fantasy don't. Or maybe not. Let me know if I'm wrong. Ooh, where'd it go? Oh no, I didn't mean to get that one down. Okay, this is another non-fiction. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. I knew who James Baldwin was, of course I did. But he's perhaps not as well known in Australia as he is in the States, and I'd never read any of his. The Fire Next Time is a series of 3 essays? I think it's 3 essays. And it was fantastic. The writing is absolutely amazing, and it made me want to read more James Baldwin. I think I've got another one on the to-read list. I might get to it this year. There's Silver on the Tree by Susan Cooper. That is part of the series I already covered. Ah, yes, this one. Brand new. Day World by Philip Jose Farmer. Another serious hit or miss author. Philip Jose Farmer did so many things really well. He could write. He had phenomenal imagination and brilliant concepts that didn't always materialize on the page quite as well as you liked. Philip Jose Farmer and Ron Goulart were two of the authors that were everywhere when I was growing up, so I read a lot of them. I read enough of them to get a bit over them and stop getting quite as excited when I saw their authors. So Sometime last year or the year before, I saw Day World by Philip Jose Farmer on a table, and I said, I've got enough Philip Jose Farmer. My sister said, no, you have to read this. This was my favourite Jose Farmer. It was amazing. You can't miss this if you hadn't read that. And I hadn't, so I picked it up, and she was right. This is quite possibly my favourite Philip Jose Farmer that I've read. And in many ways, I know everyone doesn't love this novel. In many ways, I thought that as a novel, it held together more smoothly and more consistently than many of his other books, of which I also read some in 2025. So yes, Day World. I also have the second one, which I would like to read in 2026. Ah, yes. Yes. Oh, come on. Surely I got that one out. I didn't. Okay. Stapleford. Brian M. Stapleford. Of course. Ah, there we go. I knew there was some more. Brian M. Stapleford. I got this beautiful door. Show us your doors. I don't think I'd read any Stapleford, or if I had, it was such a long time ago, I didn't remember it. And I was really blown away by how good an author he is. It's a door, so it's got that beautiful image on the inside, and it does tell you who the art is by. Cover art is by Jack Gorgan, and fantastic. Okay, so I actually ended up reading the first 3 of the Wild Blood Empire. The Halcyon Drift, is that part of that? Or is it... Anyway, loved the Halcyon Drift. Loved Daedalus Mission number 3. There was a second one, I'll come across it sooner or later. Oversea Under Stone, Susan Cooper, that was the first one. Also reread a book that doesn't seem to be in any of my piles in front of me. There's a few piles. Okay, Incident on Ath by E.C. Tubb is Dumarest of Terror, or the Dumarest Sagas, number 18. And this was a reread. I love all of the Dumarest books. I just do. Again, a bit like Edmund Cooper. Sometimes they are probably not something that a more recent reader could read and go, this is fantastic. But I have always seen them as fantastic and fantastical and interesting. So reread, 5 stars. There is a review out there. Black Easter and the Day After Judgment by James Blish. So, Black Easter, these have probably been my two of my favourite James Blishes for most of my life. Again, found them in my teens, imprinted heavily. And The Day After Judgment, this gorgeous little penguin that I've got here, I have owned continuously since... Is this my first one? Yeah, this is my first one. The first copy of The Day After Judgment that I've owned. I've had it for most of my life. And read it many times. Now, at some point when I was moving, I decided to get rid of my second one, which was Black Easter, on the assumption that I needed fewer books while moving. If I could go back in time, I'd slap myself over the head every time I thought that. And Black Easter is apparently now a very, very rare book. So if you find it in the wild, you grab that book. I've been wanting to reread it for years and whining and whinging and grumbling when I couldn't find it until I finally got this wonderful present. I'm pretty sure it's a print on demand, Black Easter, and I read the 2 of them back to back as they are meant to be read. This one I remembered really well. This one I didn't because I hadn't read it for years. It was fantastic. 5 out of 5 stars. Do recommend. Still in Philip Jose Farmer, as a buddy read with Chris over at Liminal Spaces, I read To Your Scattered Bodies Go. I'm still not quite certain if I've ever read this one before. If I did, it was so long ago that it might as well have been new. I think I hadn't read this one before. And it was a great read. We had a long, excellent chat about it, which you should go and watch. It's on Chris's channel. But it might be also on mine. Well, Chris from Liminal Spaces. Anyone who's here has to know Chris from Liminal Spaces, right? If not, what are you doing? Go there, subscribe immediately, then come back. And my next book was, number 5, a reread, Neuromancer, William Gibson. I get why he's not for everyone. He's definitely for me. Love them. Okay, City of the Sun by Brian M. Stapleford. This was the 4th Daedalus mission. Apparently I read more than 3. There you go. Again, 5 stars. Brilliant. Do recommend. Here's my copy of The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin that I mentioned. Tiny book, but disproportionately long to read because the writing is so rich and beautiful that you just keep on immersing yourself in it. Next was a comic book trade paperback. I don't review those. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. The Last Starry Night, Vincent van Gogh. It's by Adone Jameson. It was fantastic. One of the new model graphic novels where they're actually telling a story, an adult story in this different way. Next was an audiobook, Viking Britain by William Thomas. It was a long, long book. I think it took me all the way up to Cairns and back again. I do recommend. Then I reread Rhinoceros and Twilight Beach by Terry Dowling, but I've only got Twilight Beach down. Fantastic books. I could talk about these forever, and I think I did. Go and listen to what I had to say. Flare by Roger Zelazny was also a 5-star read. This was the first time I read it too, but I didn't get the book out. What have we got next? The Return by Earl Dumarest, number 32, and I'm planning to read 33 this year. Thank you, Rob from L Space. I would never own this book if you hadn't got to me. The next one was a library book. I could not wait to read The Book That Held Her Heart by Mike Lawrence, and that book holds my heart. That is a 20 stars out of 5 read. It was fantastic, and I will buy it as soon as it comes out in a decent size instead of Tombstone size. Why'd they do that? The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle is the first time I've read that somehow. It was a fantastic book. I did not read it for Die November. I read it before that in August, and it stayed with me. Great book. We'll reread sometime. Okay, another buddy read with Chris from Liminal Spaces was Picnic at Hanging Rock. This is an Australian classic. For those of you who have seen the movie, no, you do not know what is in this book. You just think you do. So you should go and watch our discussion about it, which was extensive. My Family and Other Animals, Gerald Durrell, I've already said that was 5 stars. More audiobooks. Just imagine a little flashing image here on the screen because I can't provide it. I discovered Martha Wells' The Murderbot Diaries. I did not have high expectations. Boy, was I wrong. I really loved them. As an audiobook narrated by Nicholas Free, they were a fantastic exploration of audio and all it can do for you, and modern science fiction writing and what that can do for you. So I've got Exit Strategy was number 4, Fugitive Telemetry was number 6, 5 stars, flying left, right and centre. Okay, Blind Voices by Tom Reamy, that was a reread, a many, many times reread. Ta-da! Tom Reamy. I've owned this one novel since I was a teenager, and it is slowly falling apart from rereading. I think it's fantastic. Okay, what we've got next is another Agatha Christie. That was Sad Cypress. It was Hercule Poirot 22, and I think that stood out for me because it didn't actually have as much Hercule Poirot. Oh, I did get out The Uncertain Midnight by Edmund Cooper that I talked about earlier. There it is. Good cover. Coronet Books did enjoy. Okay, Tales of Mystery and the Macabre. This was a 5-star short story list by Mrs. Elizabeth Gaskell. I somehow had never read any Elizabeth Gaskell. I don't know how that happened, but it did. They are all fantastic. I'm so glad to have encountered her, and I've got another Gaskell waiting to be read this year. The Magic Toy Shop by Angela Carter. I've been rediscovering Angela Carter, and this absolutely stunning edition of the Virgo Modern Classics special edition. Angela Carter, if you like her writing, you will like probably everything she reads. So she might well be one of those authors who my favourite Angela Carter is whichever one I happen to be holding right now. But this was great. In October, of course, I had to reread Roger Zelazny's A Night in the Lonesome October, because that's just a thing you do in October. And I did it. I saved it for last. My last read in October, it was phenomenal. I had never read any Ishiguro Kazuo except that one that's meant to be science fiction but isn't. What's it called? All of Me? Something about me. Whatever. That one. But Chris raves about them so much that when I saw An Artist of the Floating World, I got it and I was really impressed. The writing was far better than I'd been led to expect from the other book, and this, I think, was his first one. Japan-English crossover. A whole poetry collection. I don't normally read them page to page, but for Ted Hughes, I will. Birthday Letters includes a lot of poems that will be new to a Ted Hughes writer because he didn't publish many about his wife, Sylvia Plath, and he has published all of them. This gorgeous cover is done by their daughter who lives in West Australia. The Dinosaur Heresies. I didn't get that book out, but I reread that for Die November, hosted by Andrea and Brian and a few other people, but mostly that. Great book. Many times reread, 5 stars each time. The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe, sent to me again by Robert Alspace. There's names that keep cropping up in my life from YouTube. This was fantastic. I've been wanting to get back into Gene Wolfe. He is very hard to find. If you're in Australia and you see a Gene Wolfe on the shelf, just buy it out of speculation. You can probably retire on the proceeds. Anyway, Shadow of the Torturer is the first in the Book of the New Sun. One of the Sun books. Book of the New Sun. Fantastic. 5 stars. I also read, for the first time, Tanith Lee, The Dragon Hoard. It was her first book. It is definitely a kid's book. It's still a 5-star read. It's on the shelf already. Another Agatha Christie. Oh, no. We have finished the 5-star reads. All 55 of them, more or less. I guess the other Martha Wells were 4 stars, not 5 stars. Whatever. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me rave about books. I'm considering how to go about the rest. I'll probably put the 2 and 1 star reads in a single video later, from the good to the bad, starting with the good. Because there were only 6 1-star books and many of them were DNFs. But there were 10 2 stars, 33 3 stars, and 46 4 stars. I've had a really good reading year. Thank you for watching me talk about the best of this reading year, 2025. May 2026 be just as good. May we all read good books in 2026. Bye.